Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We are doing it live and doing more at 4 weekday afternoons right here in 790 KBC, right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz at 5 with Randy Wang. And be sure to stay tuned tonight at 6 p.m. for the new Just Help One radio show and podcast presented by the Union Rescue Mission. I'll be on again tonight at 6 and every Thursday night with Mark Hood, the CEO of the Union Rescue Mission, the #1 organization helping the homeless here in Los Angeles. Tonight, our special guest, Rick Caruso, Los Angeles business and civic leader, philanthropist, and founder of Steadfast LA, the initiative he's leading to rebuild Los Angeles after the fire disaster this year. We'll be on with the Just Help One radio show at 6 o'clock this evening. But first, it's Mottek On Money, live on the air right now on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Another rough day for Wall Street with the S&P 500 now joining the NASDAQ in correction territory after closing at least 10% below the previous record high. Stocks are still under pressure as President Trump continues the tariffs back and forth. And the latest target today, U.S. trade partners with alcohol products from Europe now in the tariff target. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 536 points, settling at 40,814. The NASDAQ composite moving lower again today, down 345 points, 17,303. And the S&P 500 down 78 to settle at 5,521 and seeing its first correction since October of 2023. We heard from the U.S. Treasury Secretary today trying to ease investors' concerns earlier in the day, saying the administration was focused on the economy long-term rather than 3 weeks of volatility in the financial markets. On tariffs today, the president took aim at the European Union, calling it a hostile and abusive taxing and tariffing authority, in his words, and threatening a 200% tariff on alcohol from European Union countries. In a post on Truth Social, the president said the administration would impose a 200% tariff on alcoholic beverages from the EU unless it rescinds the 50% tariffs the European government imposed this week on American alcoholic products. Also in focus today in Washington, the odds that the federal government will shut down on Saturday morning now up as a growing number of Senate Democrats have said they will not go along with the Republican plan that funds government programs through September. We'll get the latest on what's happening there from Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform, will be joining me live later this hour. Another big story, gold nearly doubling in the past 5 years and popping above $3,000 an ounce for the first time today. Right now, gold hovering just above $3,000 an ounce. I'll discuss that. Big news today with Barry Stuppler coming up live later this hour. Cryptos, too, all over the place today. Right now, Bitcoin at the moment hovering just below 81,000. Ethereum has taken a hit recently, hovering at around 1,800, and Doge at the moment at 16 cents. And joining us live now in the money, the markets, the economy, crypto, too, the whole works. Joining us live now is John NAJARIAN. Dr. J, as he's known in the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion, author of his latest book with his brother Pete. The book is titled, It's Not an Option. Learning How to Trade Options is No Longer an Option. It's a Necessity. The must-read book for all investors and traders. John NAJARIAN, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Frank, it is indeed a pleasure, and I think we got a lot to cover today, sir. So
no question about it. Let's get right to
it.
And people have been asking for you and wondering when you're going to be back on the air here. So thank you very much for stepping up to the plate here today. Give us your view of this latest market sell-off and a couple of the major averages in correction territory here now.
Well, one of the things that we always do, Frank, is we measure how much the markets react to the upside or downside. And the first time that you have a FOMO, a fear of missing out, that would be, of course, the market runs to the upside and so forth, and short covering and all the rest carry it to significant highs. You know that it's a little thin in terms of how many new people are coming into the market at that point. The same is true to the downside. And right about now, I think we're seeing close to some of the washout, meaning that perhaps they've gone about as far as they are going to in terms of selling off stocks. I mean, you look at a host of different sectors and you see the same story playing out time and time again. You see the For instance, the volatility metric that we use, which is whether you want to call it fear, I generally call it uncertainty. The markets don't like uncertainty. And when you see the VIX moving up to 30, which it did 2 days ago, that is a rather scary sight because that implies 2% moves out of the market. And with the market at roughly, 5,600 or so, those are big numbers for the S&P when it moves like that. But I think overall the takeaway from all of this is that we didn't go up as high in the VIX today, even though we plumbed down to even lower levels in many cases of these indices. And that tells me that we're getting close to that washout moment. And those create opportunities more than they create further selling. So I would look for a bounce right about here, Frank. And hopefully we see a little bit of that tomorrow, even though into the weekend there's a lot of uncertainty. And the president has certainly been very much a catalyst for the volatility that we're seeing in the markets right now.
On the Air Live with John NAJARIAN. Dr. J's, he's known on the major financial networks, longtime contributor on this program, and also co-founder of Market Rebellion. John NAJARIAN, let's get to some of the exciting stuff here on the cryptos, which you follow closely. We can also call you a crypto pioneer, having followed this right from the start with the laser eyes on. What about Bitcoin here, hovering around 81,000 here at the moment? It dipped below 80K earlier this week. Ethereum has pulled back significantly, down to around 1,800 or so. What's your views on the current crypto situation here?
Well, I think it would be the same as what you described earlier when you were talking about gold. Gold has always been, at least since the first time man and women pulled it out of the ground, it has always been a precious metal, and it has also become more of a safe haven during times of uncertainty. Now, Bitcoin, as much as I love it, has not become that, has not been a replacement for gold. Many of us call it digital gold, but still, it is a risk-on asset. Now, Bitcoin at 81,000 is still significantly higher than it was before the election, but many of the stocks that are related to Bitcoin, for instance, MicroStrategy, or now just known as Strategy, Riot Blockchain, RIOT is the symbol there, Mara, which is Marathon Digital, they are all they are all lower significantly than where they were post-election. So it's confusing to some, and I'm not saying that I understand it. I'm just saying that I think those are opportunities. All three of those stocks that I've talked about, Strategy, Riot, and Mara, given that Bitcoin is $81,000, not $64,000, where it was prior to the election. So I think many of these digital assets have been risk-on and risk-off assets, and people have been pushing away from them as the markets have been moving to the downside. Unlike gold, and Peter Schiff, a friend of mine that I talk to frequently, he is quite pleased by how well gold is doing as the asset class of, when people are fearful, they go to that one more than any of these others, even though I think they would be happy being in Ethereum and or Bitcoin right here, right now.
On your live with John NAJARIAN, say hi to Peter Schiff for me. We used to have him on during the financial crisis. He, of course, got a lot of attention as the economist who was the first one really to send the alarm bells ringing on the mortgage crisis back in those days. And now, of course, also big with his podcast as well as Gold Enterprises. So, Peter, we probably should get him on as well and tell him I said hello, if you would, John. And
I will.
And so thanks for mentioning that. And what about BITO, the Bitcoin ETF, which pays that eye-popping monthly dividend? What about BITO here and Coinbase, which is another proxy for the cryptos here?
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think Coinbase is a great proxy for the cryptos. A lot of people will never really adopt digital wallets and hardware wallets, software wallets, and the like, but they will be comfortable owning ETFs. And I'm not saying they're wrong for doing that. I'm just saying it's an extra step. It's an extra step that ends up costing them a fair amount of money. But if you're somebody who compared losing your crypto by putting it on an exchange like we saw over in Dubai 2 weeks ago, or if you are somebody who is not confident enough in your knowledge of crypto to own one of those digital wallets, a Tracer or whatever it might be, I think you're better off being in the ETFs. And certainly that BITO is one of those areas that has benefited dramatically from people's inability to navigate into the new space of digital assets. And I think that's likely to continue. And that's why they will probably get a pretty significant premium in the not too distant future.
Of course, one big headline after another here these days, and one thing that's come as a surprise to a lot of people that the cryptos have taken such a big hit following that big crypto summit at the White House just about a week ago. It seems like it was much longer than that. But what happened here with this crypto-friendly administration in place and all the troops in place there at the White House extolling crypto, and suddenly we've seen this sell-off here?
Well, I really do believe, Frank, that it's all about that safe haven that many people are seeking right now. And that safe haven has been, for the most part, precious metals, in some cases, art, fine art, and diamonds. But I think that the cryptos give you much more flexibility. And most people who are interested in cryptos and perhaps had missed the opportunity the first time it traded to 104,000 to the US dollar will start realizing that with gold over 3,000, cryptos are a pretty interesting and compelling investment for people that are seeking that sort of protection that these assets offer versus the broad market.
On the line with John NAJARIAN as we discuss so-called analog gold, which popped above 3,000 today, and digital gold, so-called, the cryptos, including Bitcoin, which right now is hovering just below 81,000 at last check. Let me ask you about options here now. You have your book out, and we got the VIX index, the volatility index, Wall Street so-called fear index spiking this week. Would you continue to bet on volatility at this point? And maybe you can give us a quick lesson on options here.
Well, 2 days ago, the S&P 500 options reflected a premium that we track as the VIX, and I know, Frank, you and your loyal listeners track it that way too. That premium went to nearly 30%, which is the highest it's been in probably 7 or 8 months. And it did so because people were concerned that the uncertainty that the president brings by saying, if you tax our whiskey, we're going to tax your champagne. If you tax our exports of vehicles, we're going to tax your production line of those same vehicles in Canada and in Mexico and so forth. I think overall people are getting not quite numb to it, because certainly a sell-off like we've seen would not describe a situation where people are comfortable with it. But I think they have not gone as far into the risk curve as they were 2 days ago. In other words, each subsequent time that the president offers a tariff, it's like, oh, he's just doing that again. And because of that, we didn't get nearly as high. We didn't get to 29.5 for the VIX, which was the high earlier this week, even though the market sold off even harder on this particular day, reaching lower levels, reaching that 10% correction level and so forth for various indices. So that's what I'd offer, is that people seem to be, I wouldn't say comfortable, because that's not fair, but I would say that they are less fearful on these dips than they were just a couple weeks ago, just a couple days ago even. It's like they get somewhat numbed to the daily drumbeat of tariffs, tariffs, tariffs.
Right. So today threatened 200% tariff on champagne and wine from Europe. So champagne with the emphasis on pain, if that 200% tariff goes through, right? Now, what about...
I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that next week on Fox for sure.
I'm going to be listening
Champagne
and watching.
Equals pain.
That's right. Normally, the only pain I like is champagne. You can use that one, too. Now, NVIDIA,
all right.
We haven't talked about NVIDIA yet. NVIDIA down 16 cents at 115 and change here. What about NVIDIA and the Mag 7 here now?
Well, and again, that's another great example. I mean, just days ago, NVIDIA traded down to 106. Just days ago, Tesla traded through 220 a share. Tesla today, even after an easing or a sell-off, however you want to put it, has held 240, $20 higher than its recent low. So, like I say, I'm not saying that people are dismissive of what the tariffs mean and what they do, but I'm saying that people are willing to buy on these dips finally. And that's something that a week ago they were not willing to do, or if they were rather weak hands. They held it for hours and then dumped back out. I think the stronger hands have been coming back in, and that's why NVIDIA, as you say, was trading in the triple digits still, but not at 107, but rather at 116, 117.
On the air live with John NAJARIAN. Has Apple bottomed? Has Tesla bottomed? We see Tesla down sharply again today, despite that big push by President Trump at the White House with the Teslas parked in front there. And there have been some funny postings about that. But certainly Elon Musk right there with President Trump in front of the White House, extolling Tesla stock, pulling into reverse today, back down to 240 or so. Apple, by the way, I'm looking here now, down more than 7, back to 209. What about those two here?
Well, of those two, and I do like both. I own them both, so it's painful for me when they drop. But I did add to my Tesla position 3 days ago now, at the 220 level, and I imagine I'll be adding to Apple tomorrow, especially if we have any weakness in that stock, because I just think that the market is overcorrecting, and these things do happen all the time. We do see, I mean, when I say all the time, folks, I mean, they do happen at least once a year, where we have pretty severe sell-offs that carry us down to a certain level. But as long as things like inflation are coming down, which today's readings and this week's readings imply that inflation is indeed coming down, and business spending is obviously, consumers drive some close to 69 or 70% of the economy. Businesses drive the rest. The businesses, because those people would love to hold on to their jobs, well-paying jobs and so forth, they worry about that, and they hunker down when things get rough, as they have been for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I think we're likely to see an easing of that fear, an easing of that uncertainty. And next time you have me on next week or whenever, Frank, we'll be able to say I was right or I was wrong.
Let's plan on doing that, John. In the meantime, break out the champagne and hopefully toast to the end of the correction here. Let's see what happens, and look forward to speaking with you again next week, I hope. John NAJARIAN, Dr. J, on the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion and author of the book with his brother Pete. Be sure to say hi to Pete for us here. The book is titled, It's Not an Option. Learning How to Trade Options is No Longer an Option. It is a necessity. John, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Frank. Have a great one, everybody.
Thanks very much. And out to the freeways now, 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. We got the High Stress Express going on this afternoon. Yep, another sell-off on Wall Street after a mixed performance yesterday. The Dow down another 537 points today. We're at 40,813. The S&P 500 down 78 at 5,521. And the NASDAQ plunging 345 points at 17,303. Looks like we have correction territory for both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 now. The yield in the 10-year note at 4.27%. That eased a bit today. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, which are still moving lower. That's something encouraging, at least a ray of sunshine there for the real estate business. NVIDIA shares down slightly today to $115 and change. Meta taking a hit, down nearly $29 at $590 and change. Netflix also down more than $29 at $890.17. Tesla shares down another $7.41 at $240 and change. Palantir down more than $4 at $79 and change. Apple down $7.30 at $209.68. Gold making big news today. We'll talk more about gold coming up in the next half hour with Barry Stuppler, veteran gold analyst, as well as head of Mint State Gold here in Southern California in Woodland Hills. Gold above $3,000 an ounce today. Silver popping above $34 an ounce. Crude oil just above $66 a barrel. Looks like Salesforce shares dropping nearly $13 at $271 and change. And Home Depot down more than $15 at $347. Helped lead the Dow Jones Industrial Average lower today. Checking the cryptos now, we see Bitcoin hovering just below 81,000, up about 800 at the moment. Ethereum up 32 at 1873, and Doge at 16 cents. And now the latest news on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Add a possible government shutdown into the mix of uncertainty these days. With the tariff news, of course, dominating the financial markets. We did see another sell-off on Wall Street. And now new drama in Washington over a possible government shutdown. Let's bring in someone who's right there at the front row there in Washington, Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform, joining us live here this afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Grover Norquist.
Good afternoon. Very good to be with you.
Wonderful to have you with us here. Give us an update on what's happening there. It looks like there's some late-breaking developments.
Well, we have several things going on. One is what we've been doing for some time, trying to Congress, the House and the Senate, and the White House try to get the Trump tax cuts made permanent, out to 100 years, not out for 5 or 10. That's moving along well, and it passed the House minus one vote, but enough to get through, and the Senate's going to work on it now. Then at the same time, we've got the continuing resolution, the day-to-day spending, not the long-term planning on how much we can cut taxes and how much we can reduce the growth of spending over the next decades, but the things that happen in the next 6 months. The House passed a bill that simply said, we're going to do what we're doing now, and we're going to do it for 6 months. That means that the government becomes a little bit smaller compared to the rest of the economy because it's not going to be growing faster than as it has been. And that got, again, all but one votes in the House, and all the Republicans are for it in the Senate. There's even been one Democrat saying he's for it, but it takes 60 votes to have a continuing resolution. If we don't get 8 Democrats to vote with the Republicans, the government tomorrow night, Friday night, will quote unquote close down, which means only essential parts of the government will be funded. I always thought it'd be interesting if that's really true. Why don't we never pay the unessential parts of government, but their definition of essential may not be yours and mine. I don't understand why the Democrats would hand to President Trump control of which bills get paid for the next 6 months. They may hope that he would be blamed for the shutdown, which has happened in the past, but even the Washington, D.C. papers point out that the Republicans went to great lengths to pass the continuing resolution so it doesn't shut down. Every Republican in the Senate, minus Rand Paul, but almost all but one, is going to vote to get the continuing resolution so that the government continues on, not growing, but just continues on for 6 months while we get everything else done. The Republicans have made it clear they want the government to stay open and to grow more slowly. The Democrats sometimes say we ought to shut it down because we're mad at Trump. and other times they want to pretend it's somebody else's fault, but that's not quite working. So these are all coming out at the same time. The president is from time to time discussing tariffs, which obviously frightens businessmen because they don't know what's going to happen or what the prices of things are. And so that sort of affected the markets and made people freeze in terms of some of their investments.
On there live with Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, coming to us live from Washington. Today is also the deadline for federal agencies to submit plans to the White House for large-scale reductions in force. They were ordered by the president about a month ago as part of the DOGE initiative overseen by Elon Musk. And I've seen the latest headlines here, but Senate Minority Leader Schumer this evening said he intends to vote to advance the Republican funding bill the House passed earlier this week, and this, according to various reports, lowers the odds of a federal government shutdown this weekend. That's the latest we have crossing the wires here now.
Yeah, the only question there when he says, will I vote to advance it, will it, at one point he was saying, I'd be willing to do it for a month, which is not really solving the problem. It just means you delay the decision for a month. If he says advance, meaning no filibuster, and I had not seen that, then they've decided that they would be blamed for a shutdown. I thought the more left of center elements in the Democratic Party were just screaming, do something. What's the thing in Animal House where Bluto or somebody says now is the time to do something stupid and destructive?
Is that during the toga party?
Yes. Well, it's the very end when they want to blow everything up because they've been thrown out of the Alpha House and they want to do something that doesn't make any sense, but they have to do something. And the Democrats, a number of the backbench Democrats, just wanted to do something big and something. But wiser heads, grayer heads may have decided to tell them, you know what, now is not the time to be seen shutting down the government. That would be helpful. The Republicans would like to see DOGE continue to do its work, to have the government continue forward, to be able to maintain protection of the border. I mean, one of the unsung stories is the people crossing the border has fallen dramatically to lows that we haven't seen for quite some time. And without rebuilding the wall, we've actually got the border under control. And this is what Biden could have done any one of the last 4 years, just by telling people that's what he was going to do.
On there live with Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. Getting back to the important tax question here now, with all this drama, what is your expectation on when this will finally be nailed down, the extension of the president's tax cuts?
We are in March. It will happen after April because we need 2 more votes to show up when the elections in Florida get you 2 more Republicans to replace people who went into the cabinet for Trump. And they will try and get it done April, May, sometime by the end of May. I mean, they know what they want to do. There are a lot of decisions to be made, but at the end of the day, get as much spending reduction as you can, get as much tax reduction as you can. What you can't agree on, we have to do later. And that outline, Trump understands that if you get the decision made now, and as he said, it'll be retroactive to January 20th. I don't know, January 20th when he became president. I would hope they do January 1st, just to make the beginning of the year so that businesses do their accounting a little bit better. But January 1st, and that then people will be able to make decisions. The faster they get this bill passed, the president understands and is telling people, the sooner businessmen and women can make decisions on expanding production, hiring more people, buying more equipment, and investing their capital. So we had a lot of people in cash wondering where to go. Give them certainty, and not just certainty for the next 5 or 10 years, but we're talking about those tax cuts that Trump got passed 8 years ago would be made permanent into infinity. That's the certainty we haven't seen for a long time.
We're hungry for certainty these days, so we will stay tuned. And thank you very much for that important update this evening. Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. His website, by the way, Americans for Tax Reform website, atr.org. You can see his latest commentary and his colleagues there. We see that Americans for Tax Reform opposes all tax increases as a matter of principle. America's leading taxpayer advocate, Grover Norquist, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. Out to the freeways now, 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Gold above $3,000 an ounce today, nearly doubling in the past 5 years. Silver is the highest it's been in years, above $34 an ounce today. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it with Barry Stupler now, joining me live, head of Mint State Gold at mintstategold.com in Woodland Hills, right here in Southern California. Barry Stupler, also former president of the American Numismatic Association. Barry Stupler, another milestone for gold here today. Give us your reaction to the big news here.
No, it's pretty much, it was predictable. If you remember back on our program right after the inaugural of President Trump, I talked about all the things that he had promised in his campaign, and this, whether you're a proponent or oppose him, you realize that many of the things he proposed will cause chaos. And chaos is what it's been causing, and at the same time, that's leading to uncertainty both domestically and internationally. And the one thing that fuels the gold price, it's uncertainty. Of all the investments out there, gold has done the best. If you look at the Dow, real estate, Bitcoin, any of those other investments, gold's up about 11%, silver up about 16% since the start of this year. So we're seeing definitely an uptrend, and we're seeing more and more buyers coming on board as the market moves higher. So this market's going to stay above 3,000, probably move above 3,000. Right now, the domestic or the actual spot price is around 29.90 trading in Asia. So we're very close to 3,000. Probably in the next week or so, we'll see a sizable move above 3,000, and then maybe some stabilization for a short period of time, and then who knows? I mean, depending upon what comes out of Washington, D.C. and the wars around the world, and a number of other geopolitical issues, we could see the market trade at 3,500 by the summer, because the buyers are just there. Central banks are stepping up. Investors are stepping up. Most of the buying is coming out of both Asia and the Middle East and Europe. Not so much out of the United States, which surprises me. But once gold breaks 3,000, makes the front page of the newspapers, gold breaks above 3,000. I expect a new slew of clients calling me. But it's just a fun time for many of my clients. Many of my clients have substantial profits in their precious metals, and we talk all the time on what they should do. And many of the times what I tell them is, if you have a better use for the money, then sell some gold. If you don't, it's just going higher. And I've been right at least for the last couple of years. So we're seeing just an incredible market right now, and it's just fun to watch the market move higher.
Absolutely, and human nature, when the gold or anything else hits record highs, it gets a lot of attention, and buyers tend to step in at that point. What about silver here, Barry Stupler? We're seeing silver above $34 an ounce, the highest it's been in years now. Yeah,
well, a lot of people who are looking at gold, wow, $3,000 an ounce, what is silver? And silver at $34 an ounce is far more attractive. The silver to gold ratio is about 88 to 1, and that's historically very high. Typically, it's around 40 to 50 to 1, and over the last, let's say, 40 or 50 years, that's probably been pretty close to be the average. It's been as low as 30 to 1, but as high as 92, 93 to 1. So we're next to the highs. So that's fueling a lot of demand for silver products also, because it's a good alternative. When I talk to clients, I tell them probably 60% gold, 40% silver. That might change based upon the price of silver, and if silver can break above 35, it's probably heading to 50. But that's a key resistance level for silver. If you look at it historically, every time it breaks above 35 or 40, it just keeps on going. And it's like gold. We have no historical precedent or history on what gold will do when it's over 3,000, but based upon what it did when it went over 1,000 and when it went over 2,000, it moved pretty quickly. So we're going to see some exciting times. Many of my clients are just sitting back and watching the gold go up, and every now and then they get a call saying, "Now, no, not yet, not yet."
I can tell you're excited, and it is an exciting time in the precious metals world. And are you doing any bargain hunting with platinum or palladium? I know there are also platinum coins and palladium coins, right? And you've been doing this for a long time, so you probably remember when platinum was more expensive than gold. But right now, platinum, I'm looking here, is about $1,012, and it also has seen a bounce recently. And palladium at $959. What about those two here?
Well, palladium is substantial, should be substantially. Right now, based upon historical numbers, platinum should be at least $1,000 worth of gold, more than gold, and palladium probably at least $2,000 more than gold. But this is the historical time. So what we're seeing is the demand is more of a hedge, a safe haven hedge. And central banks and investors are not looking to speculate. They want something that has a historical value. It's easy to sell, easy to buy and sell. I have clients coming in all the time that just want to know, can I sell it right now? I say, absolutely. I'll cut you a check, you're out the door. But many people that are investing right now, they don't want to speculate on. That's why I said 60% gold, 40% silver. Until such time as platinum and palladium start showing some strength, market strength, some stronger demand, I can't recommend it. I just can't.
Very interesting. Well, we'll continue to follow this closely with you, with the price of gold kissing record highs again today. Silver at the highest it's been in years, and the other metals also moving up. And even someone who follows the crypto, so-called digital gold, also spoke very highly of good old analog gold. Gold just a moment ago, earlier on this program. So Barry, thank you very much for that comprehensive update. We'll keep the line open to you as we watch these prices. Barry Stuppler, head of Mintstate Gold at mintstategold.com in Woodland Hills, right here in the San Fernando Valley, former president of the American Numismatic Association. Barry, thank you very much. Break out the champagne there, and hope to talk to you again very soon.
I'm already ahead of you.
I had a feeling that might be the case. Good for you, Barry. Well, thank you very much for joining us live here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and then stay tuned tonight at 6 for the Just Help One radio show and podcast presented by the Union Rescue Mission. I'll be on again tonight at 6 and every Thursday night with Mark Hood, the CEO of the Union Rescue Mission. Our special guest tonight, Rick Caruso. Stay tuned. 790 KBC.
Jim Rome takes on sports.
Why? Because you're not playing me.
With rapid-fire takes.
Y'all went from the Super Bowl straight to the toilet bowl. He's not over the NFL. The NFL is over him.
Scorching debates.
All the good, all the bad, all the ups, all the downs.
He's the Spitfire of sports smack.
Sorry for what I said because it was appropriate when I said it, but I can't say it anymore, dude. You are killing the game.
The Jim Rome Show podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.